Welcome, everyone. My name is Teresa Derrick Mills, and I'm your Urban Institute host today. This is the fourth webinar in our series, Building Your Data and Research Skills to Answer Policy Questions. In this February 16th session, we are focusing on finding research to answer your childcare and early education policy questions. Next slide. First, I need to cover some housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded. The recording and slides will be posted online, and links will be emailed to participants when the materials are ready. We've enabled closed captioning so that you can either hide captions or adjust the settings if you use the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen. We want this to be as interactive as possible. We would really like to hear from you. We encourage questions or comments in the chat box at any time during the presentation. In fact, we welcome you saying hello and putting your name and where you're from in the chat now. And we'll take questions after each of our two presentations. You're muted now, but you can raise your hand during closing discussion to be unmuted. Next slide. Our center is supported through, so we're the Child Care Research and Evaluation Capacity Building Center, and the center is supported through the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation and the Administration for Children and Families, and managed through a contract with the Urban Institute in partnership with Mathematica. My center colleagues, Maddie McKenzie-Liu, Peter Willenberg, and Laura Packard-Tucker are supporting me behind the scenes today. And the goal of our center is to support Child Care and Development Fund, or CCDF Lead Agencies, in building research and evaluation capacity. Center activities include building child care research and capacity through web events and written materials. And our OPRE project officer is Alicia Blandon. And as I said before, I'm Teresa Derrick Mills, the project director. Maddie will be dropping a link into the chat so you can see more about our Building Childcare Research and Capacity website and access the resources there. Next slide. So today we're pleased to have with us two great speakers. I'm going to be moderating the event, and we have today Karen Ruprecht, who's the project director of Research Connections. She has worked in various roles that focus on the intersection of research and policy and practice in early care and education. Her previous research and evaluation work includes conducting quality rating and improvement system, or QRIS, validation, implementation, and longitudinal studies, evaluating a state-funded pre-K initiative, and conducting research on the practice of continuity of care for infants and toddlers. She has worked directly with state child care administrators and their teams to develop, design, and disseminate research. And she's an alumna of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Interdisciplinary Research Leader Fellow Program, where she conducted research on the impact of parental incarceration on young children, families, and child care providers. We also have with us today Meg Bredesen. She's a research communications specialist at Child Trends, and she has over 12 years of experience working on research and evaluation studies to promote the well-being of young children and their families through early childhood systems, programs, and services. She has managed and supported multiple research and evaluation projects for government agencies, foundations, and nonprofit groups at the national, state, and local levels. In addition to being an experienced researcher, she has expertise in translating research to inform policy and practice and framing early childhood issues. In her current role at Child Trends as a research communications specialist, she promotes the use of research by early childhood practitioners and policymakers through thoughtful and innovative communications. We're so pleased to have both of them with us today. And now that we've learned you've learned a little bit about us, we'd like to learn a little bit more about all of you. And so we're launching a poll so you can tell us who's listening to this webinar. Are you a state and territory CCDF lead agency staff person, a tribal CCDF lead agency staff person? Are you an external researcher? Are you federal staff? Are you TA provider or some other essential person that plays, I'm sure, a very useful role in early care and education or anything else? We'll wait just a moment. Oh, this is so great to see. 50% of the people participating today are state and territory CCDF lead agency staff. 9% are tribal CCDF lead agency staff. We've got a few external researchers, some federal staff, and 17% are TA providers, 10% are something else. Thank you so much for all of you taking the time to be here today. We know that everybody's time is busy and there's so much work to do in the early care and education space. Next slide. So our focus today is finding childcare and early education research to answer childcare and development fund policy questions. When we say research in this webinar, we mean deciding on questions, searching for answers, and drawing conclusions in an orderly way. So I know sometimes the term research sounds scary, but it doesn't have to be complicated, but it does have to be systematic. So our two guests today are going to help you learn about two resources to help you find research resources. And first we'll hear about how to use Research Connections, an online childcare and early education research library. And then next we'll hear about Short Reads, a new series of short research summaries created for CCDF lead agencies. We'll pause at various points in the webinar so you can ask questions. And as you listen, we ask you to think about how your team could use these resources and post questions and reflections in the chat so that we can all learn from each other in this session. Next slide. So I'm going to turn this over to Karen to get us started on Research Connections.
Thank you, Teresa, and good afternoon, everyone. Before we begin, I want to share just a very quick story with you about how I've used Research Connections. For the past year and a half, I've served as the project director, but I've actually used the Research Connections library for over 20 years. So I was introduced to Research Connections as a graduate student, and I've continued to use it regardless of what my role has been throughout my career. If I was a researcher, a teacher, a trainer, or working to help write policy documents for a statewide early learning organization. So from the first time I learned about Research Connections 20 plus years ago, I bookmarked it and it's followed me throughout my professional career. So I shared this with you in hopes that the information you hear today inspires you to bookmark the website and use it as you need it. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Next slide, please.
Great. Thanks so much, Karen. We're so excited to have you. So can you tell us what Research Connections is and how people can find it?
So Research Connections is an online library database containing over 39,000 publications on childcare and early education topics to support policymakers, researchers, and workforce development professionals in accessing research. And many items in our collection are free to download. We're dropping in the in the chat a link to the website so you can check it out later on. And right now we're showing you a screenshot of the homepage so you can see what it looks like. The library is also supplemented with some additional information such as resources from meetings, work groups, and projects, and these are supported by the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation, guidance on evaluating and using data, and curated list of resources, which are resources that are organized by a specific topic or a category, including state and local COVID-19 reports, publications that feature data on all states, resources created by Research Connections, and research on a wide range of topical categories. So today I'm going to concentrate more on how you can find information in your research efforts, but I wanted to make sure that you knew other features of the website as well. Next slide, please.
Great. Karen, you know, state leaders are busy people. How can CCDF leaders use Research Connections to find information they need quickly?
Sure, we know that finding information can be time consuming, so we have some tips to share with you today. First, CCDF leaders can use Research Connections to find research on a wide range of childcare and early education topics, including CCDF topics. And we have a resource to help you find information that we'll share with you later on in the presentation. Second, CCDF leaders can learn what other states are doing. We know that many states, and many of you probably on the call today, want to know what's going on in a particular topic area in other states, so I'll show you how to find that information. And finally, you can ask a librarian to help you find the information you need. I think librarians are this wonderful source of information for us, and we have 2 full-time librarians that support our work that can help you find what you need as well. So next slide, please.
Thanks, Karen. So how is this library different from others? What resources are available on the Research Connections website?
Sure. I alerted to this a little earlier, but let me share a little bit more. Specifically, the library contains peer-reviewed research, survey instruments, and publicly available reports and briefs published by both government agencies and for-profit and nonprofit organizations. Our resources cover information on childcare and early education, or CCEE, experiences of children birth through age 8, and school-age childcare as well. CCEE settings, childcare workforce, and national, state, and local CCEE policies. Our librarians routinely search several hundred websites and journals from the range of disciplines and professional fields that study CCEE and add resources that fit the scope of our collections. One important note that I do want to make sure everyone realizes and understands is that Research Connections does not evaluate study designs, methods, or findings. Users are responsible for evaluating the quality of research that they find on the site. So next slide, please.
Thanks, Karen. So how is this information helpful to CCDF lead agencies?
So this information can be helpful to CCDF lead agencies because the Research Connections library is unique. Its contents are specifically curated for CCEE. You won't find any other topic but childcare and early education in our library. And as such, the topics are relevant to CCDF and easy to search. And some of the topics in the collection that are relevant to CCDF include resources on the workforce, resources on access to childcare, supply and demand, market rates, licensing regulation, equity, the economic impact of childcare and early education, and many more topics. And the website also has information that highlights research from other states. And I know that's something that is of particular interest to many state leaders.
The second bullet on the slide reads, "This information can also be helpful to CCDF lead agencies because there are different filters on the Research Connection website that you can use to find the information you need quickly."
So next slide, please.
We know that states are interested in what's going on, just like you've said, in other states. So how can they find research from those other states?
Let me walk you through how you can find information on what other states are doing. So right now we're showing you the screenshot of the homepage. And you can find out what other states are doing in the resources with data from all states, which is located on the navigation bar in the Research Library tab. And we have that highlighted in red for you there on the screen. So let me show you what that looks like if you click on the resources with data from all states. So next slide, please. So this slide shows you what you'll see when you click on that resources with data from all states tab. So you can click on the view all button that's on the right-hand side of the screen to see all of the resources, or you can click on the link that says full list of publications with data from all states. The most recent additions to the library are listed in those 3 rectangular boxes that you see on the screen. And note that when we created this presentation, it was about a month or so ago, so we may have some more recent additions to the library that's highlighted here on the screen. But let's select View All so you can see the results. So next slide, please. So this slide shows those search results, along with the left-hand navigation options with filters that allows you to further refine your search. Since we started the search by searching for resources with data from all states, you're seeing that the box that is checked yes under the state-by-state info filter, and then the results will only display those resources that meet that filter's criteria. On the slide, we've copied the search results that you see here on the screen. And the top 3 results were an early childhood bill tracking database from the National Council of State Legislatures, a link to the approved CCDF plans for fiscal year 2019 and 21, something I'm sure many of you on the phone are familiar with, and a report called Young Children's Geographic Access to Head Start Preschool Programs 2022. For each item, you'll see the title with a link, the authors, and the date the item was published, what kind of resource it is, and you can see, if you look real carefully, the first 2 are called interactive tools, and the third one is a report and papers. And you'll also see the beginning of a description about the resource. There's also a box called Add to Citation List that you can see. And if you want to go to the resource quickly, you just click on the link and it will go to the resource. If you are gathering a list that you want to look at later, then you can click on the Add to Citation List. So next slide, please. So another way to find state information can be found on the homepage. If you go to the Search Our Research Library toolbar on the homepage that we're showing here on the screen, it's right there to the left. You can click on the magnifying glass, and using the filters, you can click on yes for full text availability and yes for the state-by-state information. And we're showing those results here for you on the screen. You'll notice that the publications appear most recent to least recent. So you'll have the information that's the most recent that shows first. And the list will show the resources that are available across all states. So now let me show you how to find a resource from a specific state, because that might be something you're interested in. Next slide, please. So this slide shows you how you can find resources for a specific state. So you can click on the location to find information from a specific state, and we highlighted it here in the box for you on the screen, that red box. For example, if you clicked on Alabama, you'll get a list of resources where Alabama is named in the research. And this is another note that I want to make sure that everyone understands, that note that there might not be state resources on every topic, and not all resources specify which state is represented in the research. For example, some research may refer to participants in the study as being from 2 Midwestern states or the Southeast region of the country. If that's all the information that's shared about the study participants, then it won't necessarily be reflected in this list. But this is really helpful for you to think about if you're interested in research from other states. This is the place to go to kind of start looking through that. Next
Hey,
slide.
Karen, sorry, can I just ask one question? You're saying research from other states, but you mean research about,
Research
right?
about other states, yes, thank you. Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Prepositions matter, yeah.
All right, great. So what information do we see on each record?
So here's one, or here's what the research resource looks like. And I selected the Young Children's Geographic Access to Head Start Preschool Programs from 2022. So on the resource record, you'll find the description of the resource type, the author, the publisher. If you want, you can add this to a citation for future reference, and you can download it as plain text or APA 7 format. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see more details about the record, along with a button to download the PDF. If it is publicly available, then the full resource will be linked. If it's not publicly available, we link to the publisher, where typically there's a longer description of the resource, along with information on how to access that resource. The right-hand side also features some additional information on the resource and tells you how we've categorized it by topic. So think about this as a path or a trail of how this information is cataloged in our library, and you can use these topics to find other information. So in this case, if we decide we want to know more about access information more broadly for childcare rather than just Head Start, then you can click on and we've highlighted it here in this box, it's 3.1, Access to Childcare and Early Education. You can click on that link, and this will open a new search, and it will take you to a curated search on those topics. So let me show you where that takes you. Next slide, please. So the search results for access to childcare and early education are displayed here on the screen. You'll notice the search produced 615 results, and you can find that information in the red box on the right of your screen. You can also confirm that the search is indeed on access to childcare and early education with the blue bar right above the search results. Notice the different resource types that are displayed. When you perform a search, the resource type box will expand to show you how many of each type of resources exists in the library on that topic. If you only wanted fact sheets and briefs, for example, you can click on it and it will only show you those resources. This is a pretty helpful filter, especially if your search returns a lot of resources, or if you know you only want a certain type of resource. Another way you can filter these results is by typing another term in the search bar. So for example, maybe you want to know more about access to childcare and early education for school-age children. You can type in school age in the search bar, and it will return results for both access and school age. And I performed this search yesterday, and we had about 15 or 16 resources on this topic. So it's just another way for you to think about how you can filter that. So I'd like to go back to the resource type box and draw attention to the interactive tool resource type that's listed here. So I want to take a quick look at that resource type for you. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So when we click on the interactive tools resource type, notice that when you add another filter, it will show at the top of your search screen. And this filter shows responses that have an interactive feature, such as a map or a dashboard. And these interactive tools, they tend to be just that. They're visual representations of data. The first one listed here is the Childcare Desert Dashboard Summary for Texas. And this is an interactive map that allows you to filter by location and type of childcare to show where there might be childcare deserts in Texas. So you could scroll through to see if any of the interactive tools might help you answer or understand access issues in your state or other states. And sometimes I feel like it might be helpful to look at some of these resources to give you an idea on how you could represent data in your own state. The first one listed on the screen, again, is the most recent one in the database at the time this presentation was developed, but we are adding to this resource type nearly daily, so check back more for resources. Oh, I think, Teresa, you are on mute.
Thanks. This is really great information. But I noticed you have another kind of resource, bibliographies. Can you talk a little bit more about that resource type?
Absolutely. So let's go back to our search on access so I can show you another type of resource that we have. So next slide, please. So this was our original search results for access to childcare and early education. And I'm going to highlight a few more things about the resource type that will get to Teresa's question about the bibliographies. So first, notice the different resource types that are displayed, and that's right there in the red box. When you do a search, you'll see that each resource type is followed by a number that indicates how many resources by that type are available in our library. If it's grayed out, it means that we don't have that resource type in that topic area. So you can check or click a certain resource type to further refine your search. So I just previewed the interactive tools resource type, and that might be something you want to use, but there are others that might be helpful as well. For example, executive summaries or fact sheets and briefs may provide an overview of a topic, and these may provide you with some of the quick information you need if you have limited time. Literature reviews tend to be longer documents. For those of us that have probably written literature reviews in our lives, they are kind of long sometimes. And I don't want to detract you from reviewing those, but if you are pressed on time, then perhaps executive summaries and fact sheets and briefs may be a good place to start. So this brings us to Teresa's question about bibliographies. So let's explore that for a moment. So you can either click on the bibliography resource type, or in some cases, it might appear on the search results. So in this case, the third resource listed in the previous slide is a bibliography on access that we created for Research Connections. And here on the screen, you're seeing the first page of the Access to Early Care and Education bibliography. And I think we're going to be dropping in a link so you can see that as well. So Research Connections publishes research resources on topics of interest to the field, and these resources include a sample of research in the database and are organized by topic to help users find information quicker. So this particular resource was created for the National Research Conference on Early Childhood in July of 2022, and many of you may have participated in that conference. Last year, Research Connections produced 5 bibliographies on access, equity, the workforce, and social emotional development, and those were all produced for the National Research Conference. And we also compiled a bibliography on the National Study of Early Care and Education. Oh, Teresa, I'm sorry, I think you're on mute again.
Sorry. How do you decide what topics you create bibliographies on?
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, we create bibliographies to help supplement conferences such as the NRCEC. We will also create bibliographies at the request of OPRE, and we may suggest one if we're hearing something from the field that we think might be of interest. If that happens, we present it to OPRE for consideration before we would begin working on it. The bibliographies that we produced this past year on access, equity, workforce, and social emotional development are current hot topics in the field. So I hope you are able to use these and share them with your teams. We're also open to learning what topics might be of interest to you. So feel free to share ideas in the chat, or you can contact me after the webinar if you have some additional ideas. So next slide, please.
Wow, that sounds like a great resource for us, Karen. And I'll say too that prior to, I've been using Research Connections for about 20 years also, or
Probably
longer.
started together.
But can you show us how to find the bibliographies?
Sure, absolutely. So you can access the Research Connections bibliographies right from the homepage. Go to the Research Library on the navigation bar and select Publications by Research Connections. And this section includes bibliographies produced by Research Connections staff on a wide range of topics.
And I just want to mention too, maybe bibliography is not a term that's familiar to everybody. It's basically, it's a list, right?
Correct. Yes. It's a list of resources on a specific topic area. And, you know, we curate our own database, and at times we may go outside of our database to find information that we feel would be most current and most relevant to our audience.
Great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Great question, though. Next slide, please.
So what if I want to browse on other topics? How do we do that?
So another way to find resources is to use our Browse Our Topics feature, which is directly on the home page. So when you use this feature, it allows you to drill down on different topics. So in this example that we have here on the screen, I'm interested in research on access to childcare. So I selected the childcare and early education market, and then I selected another subtopic under that, which is access to childcare and early education. And these are pre-filled selections that you make. So you don't type it in, it's pre-filled for you. You can do that, or you could just hit view all topics and definitions for the topics, subtopics, and their definitions that we have in our library, and this will take you to the full list. Some other topics that you can search for other than access are resources on quality initiatives, equity in childcare and early education, and resources related to how parents select childcare arrangements, and many, many more. So the Browse Our Topics feature is linked to our what we call our topical classification system, which is our path or our trail of how we have categorized and indexed our materials in our library. And you can see that by selecting the View All Topics and Definitions. So I want to show you what it looks like if we select Apply to our topic of access. And I want to show you what that looks like. So let's go to the next screen, please. So this is a screenshot of the childcare and early education market, and you can see the definition for access to childcare, and you can see the what resources can be found under those topics. You can click on any of those hyperlinks there, and a curated list of resources will display on that topical area. I feel this is a really good way to show you what is in the library on different topic areas if you're interested in browsing. If you go through the list, you'll quickly see topics that align with the CCDF plan. I think this is one of the best features of this, is that each of these topics and subtopics is already linked to a curated search. So it's constantly updated as we add new material to the library, and it can really help you find what you need. So next slide, please. So if you find that you need help, as I think I mentioned earlier, you can always ask a librarian. The Research Connections librarians can help you find what you need, and you can connect with us at rclibrary@icf.com. Next slide, please.
So what other tools does Research Connection have that might be helpful to CCDF lead agencies? You've already given us a lot, but I know you've got more.
We certainly do, Teresa. So as I mentioned, you can use the Browse Our Topics to find other information related to CCDF that I just covered. And you can check out our user guide for CCDF lead agencies, and it's titled Answering Policy Questions with Research Connections. This is hot off the press, like literally it's been up for about 48 hours, and it was designed specifically for CCDF leaders in mind. So we hope that you find this helpful. And you can also use the short reads feature. My colleague Meg Bredesen will be sharing with you shortly. So next slide, please. we all encourage you to stay connected to Research Connections. If you haven't already, please sign up for our monthly newsletter. It just went out this morning, and follow us on social media. Our newsletter highlights about 10 or so recent research articles from the collection, along with curated links that are of interest to those articles that we highlight, and it can really be a great resource for you. And you can find us, oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, you can find us on social media at Twitter at ECE_research, Facebook at CCER Research Connections, and LinkedIn at Childcare and Early Education Research Connections.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, we are putting all the links in the chat, but when we send out the thank you note for those that have attended, we will also include the links there so that you will have those very shortly following the webinar. Great. So Next
Go to
slide.
Yeah, thank you.
So right now, Karen is going to share some acknowledgements. While she does that, please reflect on what Karen has presented and feel free to share any questions or comments you have in the chat. After she does this acknowledgement, we'll pause to take some questions.
Great. Thank you, Teresa. This project is supported by the Administration for Children and Families of the United States Department of Health and Human Services as part of a Financial Assistance Award, grant number 90YE250, totaling $3,953,308, with 100% funded by ACF HHS. The contents are those of the author and do not necessarily represent the official views of nor an endorsement by ACF HHS or the U.S. government. For more information, please visit the ACF website, Administrative and National Policy Requirements.
Great. So please feel free to type in your questions, reflections, or comments. So any thoughts that you have that you just want to share with us and your colleagues that are listening. We would love to hear from everyone, especially CCDF Lead Agency staff. And while we're waiting to see if anybody puts anything in chat, maybe Karen, you can help us understand a little bit more about what happens when you find something you really want to look at and it says it's behind a paywall, because you said you had things that were free and some things that weren't.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't want that paywall to be an issue for people. So not every item in our library, in the Research Connections library, links to a free downloadable resource. That is indeed correct. Some search results provide only a citation and others will link to where you can purchase the article. But here are some ideas where you could still perhaps access that article for free. And this is actually one of our bibliographies in our Research Connections section. So you may want to look a little bit more for those as well. A couple of ideas is if you could go to your local university library. If you're affiliated with a university, you can call or email your that reference desk and ask them to help you if you have that affiliation, because I think probably many of you probably have a university affiliation. You could also go, particularly for our state leaders, every state has a state library. And the state libraries in the capital city. So if you are a state employee, you can access the publication from your state library. And if you're a resident of the state, you might still have access depending on their policies. So I would encourage you all to contact your state library and ask for assistance if you find an article you need is behind a paywall. You can also go to your local public library, and many public libraries can find copies of the publication that you'd like access to. That could take a little bit more time, but it might be worth the wait. You can ask through interlibrary loan. All libraries, including your public library and your state library, can request publications through this system. If the publication is in any library anywhere, chances are your local library can borrow a paper copy for you from another library. One of the things that I would have loved as I was publishing earlier on my career is if somebody contacted me and wanted a copy of my paper, I would have freely shared that with anyone. So if you see a research article, and oftentimes the lead author's name is there with an email, contact them, identify yourself, and say, I'm really interested in your research. Would you mind sharing a copy with me, because I can't get it I can't find it on the internet. And I bet a lot of researchers would be thrilled to hear from CCDF leaders in the field. And then, of all else fails, ask the Research Connections librarians, and we can continue to hunt for that free resource for you.
Thanks so much, Karen. Those are lots of great ways to access resources. It does look like we have someone with their hand up.
Oh, great.
Fritz Herrick, I believe.
Yes, he's one of our librarians.
Okay. Peter, maybe you can unmute Fritz and he can ask us a question. Oh, nope, no question. Oops, sorry. Thank you. So Karen, are there things that you're working on now? I mean, you said you have things in process all the time.
Well, yeah, we're continually cataloging and indexing new resources literally every day. So, we add about, 100 or so new resources to the library each week. So we're constantly making sure that we keep current on what is of most interest in the field. Our latest, I think everyone is seeing right now, is the user's guide for the CCDF lead agencies to help find resources that are pertinent to CCDF lead agencies. So we just wrapped that up, and then we're continuing to work on adding new resources to the collection every single day.
And how about, I know you said your team searches various websites all the time, but say the states, territories, or tribes are working on their own research, and they have something that they would like to share with Research Connections. How do they do that?
That's a really great question. And we welcome people to suggest a resource for our library. And we have a form actually on our library site that people can fill out the form about what that resource is and submit it to us, and we can make sure that it does fit the scope of our collection. I covered earlier what is in the scope of our collection, so if it meets those criteria, then it stands a very good chance of being included. You can also just email it to me at the library, the Research Connections at icf.com, and I can make sure that the librarians see it as well. But that would be great if they run across a resource that they want us to add. We'd be happy to do that.
Great. Well, I know that I learned a lot, and I'll say, I did say before that I've used Research Connections for many years, and honestly, I look at it quite often in the work that I do because it is that great go-to place for childcare and early education. And it's nice to have, of all the millions of things on the internet, right?
Exactly.
That this is the set for early care and education, and that you guys have worked really hard for that to be comprehensive and relevant and everything. So I know I certainly appreciate that as a resource. So I think seeing no other questions from anybody right now, and please keep in mind, we'll pause again before the end of the webinar for you to ask questions that you might think of along the way. We'll go ahead and move on to our next speaker. Great. So Meg Bredesen from Child Trends, turning it over to you now.
Yeah, thanks, Teresa. Hi, everyone. I am so grateful for the opportunity to be with you today and to talk with you about some resources we're developing called short reads that you can find on the wonderful Research Connections website. So next slide, please. So Karen just showed you many wonderful ways to use Research Connections to find the research you're looking for. The challenge that we're trying to address with our resources is that you might find the report or the resource you need, but it can be really time consuming to read through or difficult to understand. And it can also be hard to apply research in real life too. So we know your time as state leaders is really limited, and you're trying to make decisions quickly with the best information you have. And so that's where we're hoping our resources can fit in. Next slide. And the opportunity we're working towards is that short, easy to use research products can be a helpful tool for state leaders as they make research-informed decisions to support children and families. Research can be used to make sure that the decisions you're making are based on evidence, and that they have the best chance of improving the lives of children and families in your state. So it's an exciting opportunity. Next slide.
Okay. Yeah, I'm so excited to hear about this resource, Meg. What are short reads?
Yeah, so short reads, they're short research summaries. They cover topics that are relevant and timely for the current policy context. They present information in various formats. So we have some text products, some graphics, We're also going to have some PowerPoint slides, videos, and so we're trying to do a variety of different formats for these. Our goal is that these products have actionable considerations based on research that can be applied in the work of state leaders. The products are vetted by experts who know the issues facing state policymakers as well as researchers. So you can trust the information, it's accurate. And then we also apply an equity lens to ground the issues in current and historical systemic inequities. So those are some of the different features.
Yeah, so tell us more about what childcare and early education topics are covered.
Yeah, so we have a few products available now on the Research Connections website. And so the ones that are posted now, there's one about defining and measuring access in a family-centered way. So I'll show this one as an example in a minute. We have a product about the factors that influence a family's search for childcare and early education, and some considerations for state consumer education websites. And then there's also a written product about state identified barriers and solutions for interstate background check requirements in the Child Care Development Block Grant Act. So we have a few available now and more coming soon. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we have several products that are coming soon on a variety of other topics. So I'll preview them here. We have one on considerations for trauma-informed approaches to CCEE systems. So this one will be posted in just the next few days, hopefully. We have another on using existing data to analyze access in a holistic way that considers families' needs and preferences. We're going to be posting a video that features families talking about the different factors that have influenced their search and decisions about CCEE. There's a product about professional development to support infant and toddler teachers and caregivers. And then we have some data summaries from the 2019 National Survey of Early Care and Education. And those are going to be shared in slide decks with some ready-to-use talking points. So that's a sampling of what's coming soon, and we're going to be posting a lot more throughout the year.
Wow, those all sound like great topics, things that everybody's thinking about and working on, trying to make better in their state, trying to figure out how do I do this and where can I get information. Sounds like these will be great resources for that. Next slide.
Yeah, so now we'd just like to pause and engage with you all via the chat. And now that you know a little bit about what the short reads are there topics or questions you'd really want to see addressed? A topic that comes to mind that you'd love to have a short product on and readily available. So we'll just take a minute here to see if anybody shares ideas in the chat. And you can also, of course, email me if you need some time to think about it. But we'd love to hear your ideas, and we'll use your input to guide what we develop next. So. See if anybody has anything they'd like to share. Oh, growing and supporting the ECE workforce. Yes. Definitely. We have one product we're working on about workforce well-being. And so we're starting to get, it's a big topic, but starting to break that down and have some different resources on that. Other ideas or other pressing questions that could be addressed in a short product, and you are also free to keep thinking and keep chatting while we talk. And like I said, I think Maddie put my email here too, so I'd love to hear from you after the webinar as well. Okay.
Oh, look, we've got another one.
Recommendations. Oh, go ahead, Teresa.
Sorry, recommendations for completing research in your state. Nice. All right, well, I think we'll keep on going to share
Sure.
a little bit more information, but as Meg said, please keep typing in your ideas. We will we'll make sure that Meg has them as she leaves the webinar so that she can bring those back to her team as well. So where can we find short reads?
Yeah, the short reads live on the Research Connections website. So you just got a wonderful tour from Karen. You will find them under the Research Library tab. There's a page called Short Reads. And like I said, we have a handful posted now and several more are coming soon and many posted by the summer. So we hope you come back and visit that page. Next slide. I wanted to just share an example here for you in case you're not clicking around on your own. So on this page, we have an example of a short read. This is one of the written products we have called Defining and Measuring Access to Childcare and Early Education with Families in Mind. So you'll see, I know the text is very small, you don't need to read it, but you can see at the beginning we have key findings at the start for people who might not have time to read more than just a couple of sentences. I know myself included in that sometimes. We also have references to the longer reports that you can easily click to if you want to read more, if you know the couple of pages here didn't provide enough detail for you. So those are two features of our written products. Next slide. And here's an example of an infographic that we've developed. So this is on the same topic as the one I just showed you about access. But this, of course, conveys those findings in a more visual way. So that's another example. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so now we're going to put up a poll and let Meg know what format do you like to learn about research. We'll give just a few moments here so you can fill this out. Do you prefer text and documents like PDFs? Do you like text on web pages, graphics or visuals, videos, presentations, interactive websites, like where you can search and sort information, conversations, or something else? And if it's the something else, please write that into chat.
And you can pick more than one.
Great. So let's see, we've got 51%, that's just a little more than half, say text and documents, and also more than half, 56%, who say interactive websites where you can search and sort. Also 56% for graphics and visuals. So it looks like we've got a wide variety here, Meg. So which is not unexpected, right? Everybody has their own learning style, the way that things resonate the most, or they feel like they can absorb the information best. And that's why you wanted to know, right? So you can make things that, that work best for lots of different folks.
Right. Yeah. And thank you, Jason. I see exploring data and data extracts is another way to have research presented. Great. Yes, that's affirming to see the variety of formats, because that's sort of the direction that we've been going, and of thinking that we want to have a variety of different formats for folks.
And I bet sometimes, you know, for all of you listening here, that maybe you thought to yourself, it depends. It depends on what I'm trying to learn, or it depends on the particular topic or something like that. But if you want to share any of those thoughts in chat, that would be great to hear from you, because the goal of these, right, Meg, is to help to provide something that's actually useful. And we need the feedback from the folks who would use it in order to do that, right? Okay, so next slide.
Yeah. Well, thank you for responding to all my questions and joining on the chat. So your input's very helpful to inform our next steps. And like I said, we have just a few short reads posted now, but many more are coming soon. So again, we would really appreciate if you'd bookmark our page and visit our page again when you're visiting Research Connections. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Meg. Next slide. So Meg is going to do some acknowledgements, and while she is doing that, please reflect on what she's presented. Feel free to share any questions or comments in the chat. We'll pause for a moment to have Meg answer any specific questions, and then we'll have Karen rejoin us so that you can ask questions from anybody in the webinar. And please feel free to keep posting ideas into the chat.
So I'd like to acknowledge that our research translation work is part of a larger contract, the Child Care and Early Education Policy Research Analysis Project, or CPRA, that's managed by Child Trends. CPRA is funded by the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation in the Administration for Children and Families, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, with funds set aside for research in the Child Care and Development Block Grant Act. We would like to thank our contracting officers representative, Evelise Martinez-Beck, and our project officers, Tracy Carter-Copay and Shannon Warren. And the views expressed in my presentation do not necessarily represent the views or policies of OPRE, ACF, or HHS.
Great, Meg, thank you. So I can see someone else said interactive maps. And we're getting a few comments. You can also raise your hand if you would like to ask a question out loud. So we welcome your questions, reflections, or comments. Please drop them in the chat or raise your hand to be unmuted. And we'd love to hear from everyone, especially CCDF Lead Agency staff. And just in case you're wondering, we keep saying especially CCDF Lead Agency staff because that is the primary purpose of this webinar and these resources. So Meg, what kinds of research are summarized in short reads?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have really a wide variety of types of research covered in short reads. So some evaluations, literature reviews, descriptive or exploratory studies. So we look for sources. Many of them we look on the Research Connections website. Look for sources that are high quality, ones that have rigorous methodology. And some of our products are summarizing just one main study, and others are summarizing across several studies. And many of them are about research studies funded by the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation. So we often start there.
Great, thank you. So does short reads include recommendations for CCDF lead agencies?
No, the products are really focused on summarizing the research evidence, and so they don't provide like a specific recommendation for states, but they do raise questions, things to consider, things that can hopefully be applied by states in light of the research findings. So not specific recommendations, but more considerations drawn from the research.
Great. And if somebody has a research-related question, can the team provide a short research summary for them?
So our team, the CPRA project that I explained, we're not able to respond directly to state requests. We'd suggest that you reach out to the TA centers like yourself, Teresa, and others to get that one-on-one assistance. But of course, we would love to hear your ideas for short reads now on the chat or email me after. We've also considered posting a request for information form, just a place online where we could get people to submit ideas for topics for short reads. And so that might be another option in the future for us to just stay in touch.
Great. And just to clarify, the particular center that we support, the Center for Research and Evaluation Capacity Building, we also are not able to respond to individual requests, but we like Meg and Karen, we try to shape the resources that we create or the webinars that we do based on what we hear from folks about what it is that they need.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I see that Jason wrote in the chat, that's especially impactful when questions and problem statements are refined and evolve when researching. And just to clarify, Jason, are you referring back to the interactive maps? Or if something else, could you please type that into the chat? That would be helpful. Well, let me invite Karen to come back and join us again. Hey, Karen.
Hello.
Do either of you have questions for each other?
Ooh. Well, I'm always eager to receive the short reads communications that you put together around this. I think they're a real asset to the field. We like to highlight it in our newsletters and social media and things like that. So I think it's a real win for the field to have some of that research digested down to like a smaller piece. So I think they're super helpful. So I hope folks on the line take advantage of that.
Yeah, great. And well, thank you. And I hope, you know, we have many, many more coming too. So yeah, hoping to keep that page populated and keep responding to the current policy context too.
Exactly.
So somebody did suggest interactive maps. Is that something that Meg, you've been considering? And then maybe Karen, you could let us know if that's like something you can find easily on Research Connections.
That is not something in our plans. I know I'm familiar with some different interactive map products. They're probably linked on Research Connections. But I too really enjoy that format. And so that's helpful to know that that's something that you all are using in your work.
Yeah, and we do have the interactive tools resource type that we just added to our collection, and we've been able to mark certain resources as an interactive tool, and maps are a big part of that. So we have a keen eye for adding to that collection because we know that's something that the field really enjoys seeing and being able to interact with it. So and again, if anyone sees things in the field that apply to our collection, please email me or email the library, and we can take a look at it to see if it fits the scope, and we would be happy to add that.
So we do have a question from Rachel. She's asking if we have any tips for sharing research with legislators, or maybe Karen, if you have any resources on Research Connections that are related to that.
That's a great question. And, you know, with Research Connections, we have, like I said earlier, nearly 40,000 resources in our collection on all topics of childcare and early education. We don't have a specific topic on how you would go about sharing research with legislators or lawmakers, but it might be something, I don't know if Child Trends or Teresa, if your center has anything specific on how to do that. I mean, typically, I think we all know like many of us on this line, lawmakers have even less time than all of us. So getting to the point and presenting facts to them that are meaningful to their state or their constituents. So perhaps even looking for information on the collection that is from the specific state that you're from. Sometimes I think lawmakers like to see research that's happened in their own state and their own geographic boundaries. That doesn't really tell you how to communicate that information, but perhaps Meg or Teresa also has some ideas.
Meg, I'll defer to you first. And then
I think you responded really well, Karen. In terms of like formats for communicating, I think it's kind of getting to know that individual too and what they would prefer. I think hopefully having some short products and being able to filter, like Karen said, on research connections can give you a nice baseline of places to start. But yeah, okay, Teresa?
Yeah, I will say that that's not a primary focus of the work that we do. Although we do talk about how to communicate findings. I think what Karen said is probably the best bet, and I know that's probably not a satisfactory answer, but I'd encourage if anybody listening has any tips for each other that you should go ahead and type those into chat too.
Indeed.
Okay, well, I think I know that I've learned a lot. It's always great to learn more about how to more efficiently find what it is that I'm looking for, and to have resources like short reads as a really good starting place for learning about something and figuring out, do I want to dive deeper? Do I want to learn more about this? So thank you so much, Meg and Karen, for joining us. And to everybody listening, we've got some additional resources we're going to share and a couple of poll questions we need you to answer. We hope that you will answer to give us some feedback on this session to let us know if we met your expectations and if you found this useful. So Peter, if you could put the slides back up. Great. So just a reminder, please check out all the resources from today. Check out Research Connections website and the short reads page. Check out the OPRU website for slides, audio recordings, and transcripts of webinars posted a few months after each of these webinars. Check out the Building Childcare Research Capacity webpage for slides from past webinars and other resources. If you have questions, feel free to email me, Teresa Derrick Mills, at tderrick-mills@urban.org. We will have other webinars in this series. None of them are scheduled at this time, but be on the lookout, and we'll be sending information as soon as that's available. And please respond to our polls and let us know how we did in this webinar. Maddie, if you could launch the poll, great. So please select the option that best represents your perspective on the following statement. As a whole, the webinar was a good use of my time. You either strongly agree, are neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree. And please select the option that best represents your perspective on the following statement. My knowledge or skills have increased as a result of the session. Strongly agree, neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree. And we really appreciate you spending some of your afternoon with us. Although I suppose it could be morning if you're on the West Coast, and hope again that this was a useful resource for you in your work. Thanks, everyone.